Welcome to my World History Notes, where I read from the book that I wrote to teach homeschoolers world history. A Bible believer looks at world history. Now, you can find my book on lulu.com, amazon.com, or at the Bible Baptist bookstore. It's a survey, it's not deep. You have to go a lot deeper than I just want you to be familiar with terms and people and places, events, and concepts. And then you'll want to dig deeper and look for even more stuff to be conversant in world history. You won't agree with what I'm saying, possibly my conclusions. You might be offended, but that's okay, just as long as you have your own conclusions on world history. So we're going to begin. I'm talking about the Enlightenment today, and the Enlightenment. And we're going to go look back to look at events which also help mold modern intellectual thought in this era. The next great humanistic revolution after the era known as the Renaissance is called the Enlightenment. Thomas Aquinas, the 13th century Catholic theologian who glorified the logic of Aristotle and helped integrate that pagan philosopher's thoughts into Catholic theology, was one of the early forerunners of both the Renaissance and the Enlightenment. The intellectual elite that were born of this movement believed that they could improve mankind's position by attacking Christianity, although many of them did believe in God, which they regarded as mere superstition, and the hereditary aristocracy of Europe, which they regarded as tyranny, both concepts holding back mankind's progress towards some eventual golden age. Europe had been ruled by the Roman Catholic Church and by an elite of nobles who owned great land and even small states themselves and passed them on to their offspring by inheritance, often viewing entire people as groups of nothing more than a large private farm holding. One of the beliefs that the kings held on to, such as King James I of England and Louis XIV, the so-called Sun King of France, was called the divine right of kings. This concept stated that kings ruled at God's command and under his authority, and their power was not to be questioned by inferiors, as the king was was accountable only to God. There is much more to this ideal, but this simplistic explanation will help you understand the basic attitude. Another forerunner of the Enlightenment was the scientist Galileo, who challenged the church's Aristotelian and Earth centered solar system with the sun centered solar system of Copernicus. The geocentric or Earth centered view of scientists such as Tycho Brahe were completely overthrown, and we now believe firmly that the Earth revolves around the sun rather than vice versa, without any observational proof. Again, another forerunner was Francois Rabelais, who challenged church doctrine in his biting satire Gargantua and Pantagruel. Michael de Montaigne Michel de Montaigne argued that all morals are relative and we don't really know anything absolute. Two of the most famous thinkers of the Enlightenment were Voltaire and Rousseau, both challenging the aristocracy and denouncing religion, all the while making a half-hearted attempt to stay within the good graces of the Catholic Church and the nobility that supported them. Our founding fathers were influenced a great deal by these thinkers. It has been argued that these Enlightenment thinkers, that many of our core principles, as stated in our founding documents, are based on deism, the belief in a God who is not personally involved in the affairs of men, even if he eventually holds them accountable. The personal beliefs of our founding fathers are arguable, as you can read as many accounts that they were fiercely Christian as you can accounts that they were deist or agnostics. I have an account that says that George Washington was baptized by an evangelical preacher, another that he says he went to his grave not believing in salvation through Christ alone. The Enlightenment's inevitable result was the French Revolution, where all religious faith was condemned as against reason. Of course, this supplanted one type of tyranny with another, just as atheistic religions like socialism and communism later would do by killing thousands and millions in the name of the best interest of human progress rather than in the name of God. Still, a dead person is a dead person, regardless of the reason they were murdered. Another result of the Enlightenment was the advent of a radical communistic belief and the idea that a quote perfect state could be created without God being a factor at all, utilizing only human reason. Tens of millions of graves in the 20th century proved the fallacy of that notion. The windbags of the Enlightenment produced so many volumes of writing that you could devote an entire course to just studying their work, and many have. Of course, this only leads one back to Protagoras and his man is the measure of all things nonsense. So we're going to talk about the Great Awakening next, and particularly in America. And I hope you'll study world history, and even if it's only to prove me wrong, I'd like to see you study it and have your own opinions. Thank you very much.